Hello, this is Truth Be Told Transformation, and I'm Bonnie Burkert, here to share tools for transformation to live your highest truth. One longtime tool of transformation is finding a way to divine, to look into questions that we have. And one of the ancient and most beloved ways, and I think it's getting more popular all the time, is the tarot deck. And there's many decks, and on other episodes you've maybe seen me talk with people about this. But this deck is going to be very unique to discuss, and I want to break it down more further and find out what Davezilla can tell us about his super unique deck and how the classic tarot symbols get transferred into the new, interesting occult symbols of everything from, I don't know, Dave, tell us, UFOs, cryptids. Tell us a little bit more about your new deck.
Yeah. I wanted to do a deck that was not like the others. Like you said, you see a lot of decks that are like Soul Journey or a lot of fairy decks, things like that. What you don't see are any decks having to do with paranormal or Fortean phenomena or ghosts, cryptid sightings, things like that. And I've met people who've gone through those experiences, and I've had a few of my own. Have not seen Bigfoot, have not seen cryptids, but I would love to someday. But I noticed that they all had gone through it, like they seemed transformed by the experience. And I wanted to make a deck that kind of addressed that. So it could be kind of seen as almost a shadow work deck where you're working with getting, because some people were genuinely upset by what they saw and some people were not. But most people saw it as a very profound experience. And I wanted to have a deck that would deal with that. So to your point, yes, I changed all of the suits and the court cards. Normally there would be similar to playing cards. You'd have in the courts, you'd have an ace, a jack, a king, and a queen. And then in tarot, those would be a page, a knight, and a king and a queen. I changed those so the page is now a fan. So someone who's really interested in this sort of subject matter. And then the knights became hunters. So like imagine someone who would be on a show like Ghost Hunters or something like that, where they really made it a profession or more than just a hobby. And then I made the queens being people who are advocates. They're past even just like making this a hobby or something that they're really interested in, but they want others to be converted, and that would be someone like me. And then as a antithesis to that, I made the kings into skeptics. So because I do believe in tarot, you need to have opposing forces. And having a skeptic who doesn't believe in these things, seemed like a good way to handle that, especially since there's so many of them. The court suits have changed too. So instead of having those four elements of, I still use the four elements, but I changed what they apply to. So instead of doing air as swords, air is now ghosts. Water being cups is now portals. Earth as pentacles or coins are now saucers or UFOs. And then wands, I did knocking sticks, which is something that the Bigfoot community believes that the Sasquatches communicate with sticks, and that they wrap them very hard on branches and can be heard miles and miles away. And I thought that would be a good replacement for the fiery nature of wands. And then all the major arcana have been changed too. So instead of having a fool card showing someone going off a cliff, I have a young woman going into a dark haunted forest, not knowing where she's going. Instead of a magician, I have a remote viewer from the CIA project. That sort of thing.
Fantastic.
So those are quite different changes than your normal deck.
That's great. And we'll dive into this. Dave, I should have asked you before we even got started, but if you have a deck handy, for those people that are viewing on YouTube, you can for sure feel free to pull up cards and show us. We're obviously audio in a lot of instances, but we do have YouTube viewers. So don't be shy to show us any of these images. So sure. Let's go back a little bit. This will be a chance for us to get to know you better. To tell us about your understanding and use of tarot thus far in your life, and how it sort of intermixed with the paranormal interests that you have.
Okay, so I was initiated into Wicca in 1979, and the way that were doing divination in that particular group was using tarot. Okay. So I've been doing tarot for over 40 years now. And my first deck was probably not the smartest deck to pick. I picked the Aleister Crowley deck, which is not good for beginners.
Stay on that for a moment. Why? Yeah. For those of us who are still learning about the tarot. So I know I feel like I really want to work initially with the Rider-Waite deck, just to get to stay with the classical images. So you go ahead and tell people a little bit about the distinction between that some of those classic images that we know from Rider-Waite versus what you just mentioned, like with Crowley.
The Crowley deck. Yeah, he had. I'm forgetting the woman's name, but she was a brilliant painter and surrealist, and she worked very closely with him, coming up with very strong imagery. It's the deck can go a little on the dark side at times, and I'm not using that as a knock on Crowley, but it's definitely a different type of deck, and I don't recommend it for beginners. It's the symbolism is way too different, and you are 100% correct. The Rider-Waite is the deck you start with, absolutely, and a deck like Crowley's was meant for people who've been doing magic a long time, particularly ceremonial magic, and I did not. I didn't know anything about that, and found the deck was not wanting to work with me very well.
Interesting.
And I eventually switched to a different deck, which I recently had to retire because the cards got so tattered. I was using this one called the Witch's Tarot, which is out of print, until I made my own, and that deck I'd had for over 20 years, and it's literally like threadbare now.
Cool.
So
I love that when you really stay. And I mean, feel free to give people your thoughts on working with cards. Again, as we talk about tools and how somebody would use a tarot deck for themselves, because maybe some of us feel like we need to work with a professional to get readings. And but you clearly, when I hear about the fact that a deck was worn so thin, that's clearly you working with it all the time, maybe multiple times a day. I mean, it's amazing, right? By the way, I just want to say really quick, because I think it's good. These are details. I looked up when we were talking. The illustrator of that Crowley deck, her name was Paula Zorite. And I mean, it's just an interesting era. And again, we're talking about interpretation of the tarot. So you started with learning the tarot, and then you went into a different interpretation. You learned the Aleister Crowley. You learned that it didn't work for you. And feel free to jump in and tell me, like, what was it? Was it were the images repelling you somehow? I mean, what was it that you felt wasn't working?
I feel like a deck gets its own spirit after a while.
Yeah.
Almost like a servitor. And that deck just did not agree with me. Now, I can use it now, but at the time I had it, it just did not want to give me good readings. And I felt like it was almost like just messing with me. And again, this is why I said I wasn't ready for it. And to your point earlier, though, about there's different ways to use tarot. Yeah, I was trying to use it for very, his deck is heavy. It was meant for big ceremonial magic, and I would just want to know, am I going to have a good week or not?
Right.
And that's not the deck for that.
Where should I go for dinner tonight?
Right. Yeah, most of us, that's why there's court cards. We want to ask some mundane questions once in a while. Is this the right job? Whatever. And that wasn't a good deck for that. And I did find that other decks since then. I love my own deck for this, but my own deck, I originally had designed it just for like when people are going through just really weird, unexplained times in their lives, and they're like, my deck's just not getting this. And this deck was meant to deal with ancestors and ancestor worship and cryptids and UFO sightings and things that are just not part of regular decks. And I thought there's got to be some deck that's got to explain those things, or at least help you connect with them. And that's why I made it. And I thought people won't use this as their everyday deck. They'll just use it as a once in a while. But I've gotten lots of emails from people saying, no, this is my everyday deck. I love this thing. It's working. So I'm like, all right. I personally switched between that one and another one I love called the Light Seekers Tarot, which has really beautiful imagery and speaks to me really well. And to me, that one of the things you have to have, the imagery's got to be good. I can't stand when I see a tarot deck that has a great premise and then the drawings look like they were done by a fourth grader, or they just aren't well thought out. I really think the art really helps, and being a competent artist really makes a difference in the deck, and how your subconscious relates to the imagery is really important. And if you don't, I don't get that out of some of the decks that are just kind of like have weak art.
Well, and I also want to point out that Dave is the illustrator of his deck, and it's the Tarot of the Unexplained. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been an illustrator for most of my life, and right now I've been doing lots of book covers for Wiser Books. But yeah, I love using my skills to do draw and paint, and this was such a big challenge for me. If you ever been tried to do a tarot deck, I don't know how long it takes everybody, but mine took me 900 hours to draw and paint everything, and then another 200 to write the book that came with it.
Oh my gosh,
so that was
amazing.
A big chunk of a year.
Wow, that is a true sort of, I don't want to call it labor, but I'm just going to say the term labor of love. I mean, you definitely were very immersed. And David, this is so interesting to imagine your background with sort of a tradition, steeped in traditions. The Wicca practice, the practice of Wicca, is a celebration of the old. And yet you're taking in psychic phenomenon, paranormal, whatever the terms you want to use, that maybe we're more familiar with today. I mean, I don't know. Are there texts from yesteryear that spoke of aliens? Maybe a little? Bigfoot?
Well, there's people that claim Ezekiel in the Bible mentions flaming wheels in the sky, and a lot of people claim that's a reference to them. The Sumerians certainly reference the Anunnaki, which I did put in my deck, actually.
Oh, is that right? Where's the Anunnaki?
The Anunnaki I did as the Sun card, and let's see if I can find it. The Anunnaki were the Sumerian gods. So this is like the very first civilization we're talking about, and they believe that they came down from the stars. They said that the Anunnaki came down. They were also believed in a people called the Nomo, and so I made both of those in there. I made a Nomo ship, and I made a picture of the Anunnaki, and wanted them both in there because I think they're. Why can't I find? Oh, here it is.
Let's take a closer look for those of you on YouTube. All right. So we're seeing a visual. Davezilla's showing a visual, and you can describe it a little bit more, from where I sit.
Yeah, so this is the Sumerian. I don't know if they were told to have flown on discs, so this is kind of my interpretation of them. I don't know if they looked like that. one thing that's consistent in my cards is the backgrounds are one continuous landscape. And I laid them out and illustrated them that way, that it's one continuous story going on through one continuous landscape.
Gorgeous. Do you mean all 78 cards?
Not all 78, but almost all of them. All the court cards are continuous for sure.
Bravo.
And yeah, and in particular, if you look through the knockers, which are the Bigfoot cards, you'll see this. You'll see a female Bigfoot going on a story through this whole journey, and she keeps encountering things from one to the courts, and she keeps changing as she's going through it. So that's an interesting one. Some of the portals, I have one card or two cards that face each other. If you happen to notice, there's a woman in each card, and they're reaching across, their arms go across to the other card, and they're trying to pull each other into each other's portals.
How beautiful.
So I did some unusual things. There's a lot of Easter eggs like that in there, where if you like put certain cards together, you'll realize there's different like little puzzle things you could make out of them. And I think those kind of things are important to do in decks too, because they kind of like snap you at some point where you're like, whoa, I didn't expect that to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And how well, I think also what you were, that continuum you describe, imagine how it interplays when you lay out multiple cards, when you do a reading, a layout for a reading, then how that would work. So I'm going to ask you about that layout in a minute. Can I stay with this sun card, this sun and Anunnaki card? Mm-hmm. I know a lot of our listeners are, certainly interested in the Anunnaki. And so I would like we're going to just use this one example to do a deeper dive of how, maybe you tell us what that sun card means, and then how you got to the Anunnaki, because the sun could be lots of different things. So I'd just like to hear your process on that, please.
Yeah, I think that's one of the strongest cards, the sun card, because how much energy is coming to us from the sun all the time. It's such a powerful thing. Now, in earth traditions like Wicca and Druidism and Santeria and things like that, you're going to deal generally more with the moon, but the sun's really stronger. I mean, it's our star, and it's such a powerful, positive card that for us to not, for that not to be a strong card here, it would be a disservice, I thought. So I wanted to have a strong imagery, and using the deities of the Anunnaki, the very first civilizations, gods, seemed to me a really powerful thing to use. And in my there's a full color book that comes with the deck that describes them all, and I wrote in here, the Sumerians, Babylonians, Akkadians, and Assyrians all claim to have had help from a sky race of intelligent beings called the Anunnaki. It was this race who allegedly taught them how to begin civilization. The Anunnaki were described as much larger than humans, wearing lots of gold and silver jewelry and having wands that could fire an energy beam as a weapon. It could also be used to levitate large objects and direct their flying. This is a fun card that tells you to enjoy life now. Life is short. Don't waste it worrying about problems you have no control over. Everything's improving in your life. When this card is reversed, heed its permission to do whatever the heck you want. Call in sick, leave the chores to someone else, go to a new bar, buy something nice, be excellent to yourself. This is the get out of jail free card. And then for a meditation, because I put a meditation on each card, count your blessings. If you bought this deck and you had some extra pocket money, you can read, you're a psychic, you enjoy art, what else do you need? I just wanted this to be a fun card.
Excellent.
And a happy one.
Thank you. I love hearing that little sample read. In fact, I'm going to let you think about this, but maybe at the end of our conversation in a little bit, maybe you'll do a read for those that listen Listen at any time. It doesn't have to be only when this is live. It's like anytime you listen, it's going to apply. So stay with us, and we're going to get Davezilla to give us a little bit more of a read. But I like hearing your process on this. And for me, you know, I have a couple of favorite tarot cards. My day job is named after the Magician Media, and so, you know, like, I'm a big fan of that. So it's really great, because I'm sure that, you know, you've been in this for years. I mean, if you're telling me your tarot deck is kind of falling apart, I know that you've been studying this for a really long time. So tell us again. You know, I want to hear a little bit more about. You could have stayed very earthy, traditional, ritual, and yet you find yourself coming into the mysterious that have a lot of us intrigued in this day and age. In fact, one of the fun lines of it's Wiser is your publisher of this deck, correct? And one of the lines they use is, "This tarot deck would be one that Fox Mulder from X-Files would want to have," you know?
Yeah.
Which is so classic. So obviously, when we're talking about Fox Mulder, it's a little bit different than, you know, the celebration of Beltane at the in the classical, you know, in the old country. So I would like to hear about that bridging in your journey, you know, as you have the traditions, and yet you're also tapping into, I'm not going to say they're current, because these are some ancient mysteries that exist, but they're probably a little bit more current mind as people explore the paranormal. So
yeah, and I think
tell us about your journey.
Like, you think there's kind of like cycles with the media on these things too?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and when I was a kid, I was growing up with Kolchak the Night Stalker and Night Gallery and In Search Of. Yeah. And there was a whole bunch of those kind of early ancient mystery shows and UFO shows were going on when I was a child. And then they kind of went away for a while. And then the last 10 years, they've just exploded again. But also the number of people who are in Earth-based traditions has gone from, I think, 400,000 in 2000 to now in the millions. As of the last census, it's over 2 million that are, you know, openly acknowledging it. Obviously, that's not acknowledging all the people in the African traditional religions.
True.
Because that would be a couple other million, and they just generally just won't openly, you know, talk about that, and that's fine. I would say the most interesting thing that happened to me was when I was a kid. I was watching TV one night with my dad, and we heard someone that was really strange. Someone on the television went, "Look!" And right as they did that, something flew past our house. And we went outside to see what it was, because we were like, that was weird. Was that a comet? And my dad and I ran outside, and most of our neighbors were already out in the block, and they were all standing looking up. And there was this big disc above us, and it had lights going all the way around it that just kept blinking around in a circle, and it wasn't maybe 30 feet above us. Pretty big.
Wow.
Not as monstrous as some of the things you hear on other people talking about, where there's like, oh, it's the size of a football field. No, this wasn't that big. But we were told the next day, a bunch of us called the police, and someone called the Air Force, and then we were told a couple days later that it was an advertising plane. And it had a message that spun around. And we were like, I'm not buying that. My dad was in advertising before I was. And he said, there's no such thing as an advertising plane. And we certainly don't have planes that hover. Well, I mean, at the time, right. No one was going to be getting, you know, if that was a Harrier jump jet, we'd have been blasted with exhaust, and it would have been extremely loud.
Wow.
So
amazing.
That was my first.
And so many people saw it. It wasn't just you.
Yeah, it was a whole neighborhood of people. And this was I grew up in kind of a wealthy family. So this wasn't like out in the farm in rural areas which is what you usually typical hear. This was in the suburbs of Birmingham, Michigan, which is like wealthy, well-to-do people. And we were all like just dumbfounded watching this thing.
Stunning. How old were you?
9 or 10.
Oh my gosh, Davezilla. That's nuts. That's intense. That's intense. Okay, so go ahead. Tell us how this continued to inform your exploration.
Yeah. So then I always had this fascination. I started getting into the books of Charles Fort around the time I was in Wicca. And Charles Fort, if you're not familiar, was a guy back in the day who collected newspaper headlines, thousands of them. He was a fantastic researcher, but he mainly collected weird ones like people who experienced a rain of frogs, or someone who just vanished one day and never came back, or someone who vanished and experienced time loss, all those weird things, and UFOs and skyquakes and thunderbirds and all these strange things that happen. He didn't make any opinion on them. He just collected them and published them in these books. And I was fascinated by these things because who wouldn't be? They were just so strange. And I'm typical Aquarius, probably worse because I have a stellium in Aquarius. So I'm even more adapt to to be obsessed with these sort of things, the weird things. And I just kind of stuck with it and kept following it. And then I was when I was maybe 20 something, a friend of mine got into ghost hunting, and he's now really kind of a famous ghost hunter. He's on TV and stuff a lot. His name is John Tenney, but he and I, he's still my neighbor. We live a couple blocks away, but he's on cable all the time on History Channel, and he had his own show. But he and I used to ghost hunt around here because the city we live in, Royal Oak, is pretty old and has a lot of weird history to it, and some strange death things. One of them being, this is where Dr. Kevorkian was from.
Oh, true. Right.
When he was doing this. Yeah. So anyways, John got me really hooked on ghost hunting and more of the thing, especially because I would go to his lectures all the time and watch him talk about different things in paranormal. And there was a author, I'm not, are you familiar with Robert Anton Wilson? I'm not. He wrote these great books, and back in the 70s he wrote one called The Cosmic Trigger, and it really exploded my head. Everybody that I've lent this to, because I always keep about 3 copies of it, every time I lend someone a copy, I never get it back, and I don't expect it back, but they always told me, oh my god, my life got really weird for a while. I'm like, yeah, wow, there's something strange about this book. Okay. But he made a great observation. He said all of these things seem to happen at the same time in the same places. People who see a UFO in the sky at the same time, psychics are having like strange things going on in their head. There's people having electrical problems, and someone's spotting a cryptid. And they're all happening at the same time, all the time, which made him think they got to be connected. And he also said that I think these things are kind of, whether they're actually there or whether they're archetypes of our brain, they seem to be happening everywhere. He said if you saw a little green man in your backyard and you lived in Mexico, you'd say, oh, that's Mescalito, the god of the mescaline bush. If you saw the little green man in Ireland, you'd say that's a leprechaun. And in the US, you'd say that's a Martian, and it's the same archetypal creature, but you're viewing it through a different cultural lens. And I think that's another thing I tried to address heavily in my deck was archetypes. So I didn't want to use the traditional devil, for example, for the devil card. I used a local devil to Detroit. There's something called the Nain Rouge. Detroit used to be a French colony, and we have an imp that's been appearing for 300 years since Cadillac first came here. He encountered it and he hit it with a stick after being told he was going to see it. And some fortune teller said, you're going to encounter this imp and just be nice to it and ignore it. And instead he said, get away from me, imp, you imp, and be gone, and hit it with a stick. And all of a sudden his fortune started failing. He got fired from his position and sent back to England, and all these terrible things happened to him. And I think he was imprisoned. But ever since then, that's been kind of like our Mothman. Every time the imp appears, the Nain Rouge, someone says something bad happens in Detroit, and so there's an annual parade every year to march it out. and get rid of it. Although some people, like my friend John Tenney, try to be on the side of the imp and say, keep it and protect it. It's our local cryptid.
Yeah, exactly. Just honor it. Yeah. Bake it some cookies or something like that.
Right?
Oh my God, this is so incredible. I'm dying to see this this imp on your card. I mean, this is really, really clever.
Yeah, he's pretty
and
cool.
I like the way that you're taking a lot of traditions and again, as when you read us an example, and so you've got it's 78 cards, correct? So you've got 78 descriptions of these with the history of what all of these different paranormal, unexplained, mysterious creatures are. Okay, we're taking a closer look.
So that is Cadillac and encountering the imp for the first time.
All right. And so tell us a little bit about your interpretation of the devil card. So I don't want people to be creeped out because that devil card on the Rider-Waite, is a very scary looking devil. But, when it comes up, you don't feel good when that shows up in a reading, so in a spread. So what would you like to tell us, Dave, about the devil card in your deck?
Yeah, on most decks, the devil card represents, facing your own vices. And a lot of people have different types of vices. But the devil card in particular, it's not about worshiping the devil or encountering the devil. It's literally about your own devils inside you. And I didn't really go to that. I took it more of exploring your shadow self or being sucked into your shadow self. So like sometimes we have a tendency to like feel miserable and want to listen to sad songs all day and just be self-deprecating, that sort of thing. And I think that's, to me, the worst kind of devil is when you start believing your own BS, if that makes sense, or thinking all the bad things you could about yourself rather than any positive things. A rabbi once told me that the word Satan means adversary, and his interpretation was that you're your own worst enemy. You cause all your own problems. You are the put the things in your own way, the obstacles in your path that cause problems in life. And I've always kind of stuck with that belief that we talk about devils, but we really mean things that are in us that are preventing us from being what we were meant to be and being successful and happy in life, and that they tend to be self-generated. And I think that if you ever heard of the term of egregores, where you can basically create a spirit with your own thoughts. I think that some of the things that people claim are like poltergeists or like devils around their house or things like that are literally thought forms that they've created themselves through their own emotions being so targeted that it took its own life, or took on a life, I should say, not took its and became a thing that you could actually interact with. A lot of people believe that's what some of the deities are. Someone died, people kept worshiping it or interacting with it or giving emotions towards it, and it took on its own persona over time. And if that's the case, my theory is that at some point Elvis will be the strongest spirit ever to live in the U.S. because the number of people that put offerings on his grave every day is in the hundreds.
That's so cool. I love that. Keep him alive. Wow, that's great. I really appreciate your wisdom on that and your thoughts on, being our own sort of worst enemy at times, adversary, like looking at that word. So, thanks for your wisdom on that. Hey, where do you get the name Davezilla, by the way? I mean, that's kind of scary and bad, isn't it?
It's what?
It's sometimes the word, when you add Zilla to the end of a name, sometimes it's not a good thing, but you are clearly a very wise man. So tell us where that nickname comes from.
So that name goes way, way back when the beginning of the internet. I was doing websites the minute they became out. I got into that, and I was like, I should get Dave.com. And I looked, and it was like in 93, there was already 5,000 Daves online. I'm like,
you thought you were early.
I should just make up a word then. And I had a girlfriend who had made up that nickname for me because I was really tall. made up that nickname a long time ago. So I'm like, I should use Davezilla. That's a made up word. So I bought Davezilla.com, and it just kind of stuck. And it was good because I was easy to find online until one day I got a little large packet in the mail from a law firm in Japan from the company or family Toho. They're a large karetsu in Japan.
Sure.
They own all the pottery in Japan and anything related to Godzilla.
Wow.
And they send out regular cease and desists to anyone using Zilla. But I was like, I'm fighting this because there's a show called Bridezillas, and there's a web browser called Mozilla. They're not in trouble. I'm going to call BS on this.
Like,
so
leave me alone. Leave me alone.
Absolutely. So I posted the cease and desist letter on a bunch of blogs, early blogs at the time. This was in late 2000. And by 2001, I had so much publicity from it. It was crazy. I was on CNET and Tech TV and a whole bunch of things getting interviews. And a law firm in Israel they sent me this binder for free. They did the whole case for me and just said, look, you can't get in trouble. Zilla is actually a Hebrew word. It means shadow. It's a girl's name. And it's also a flower in Egypt and a spider in Europe. There's nothing they can do with that word.
Fabulous. I love it.
So
nice try.
I'm now in the Urban Dictionary as a verb, and there's a Wikipedia page about me. So I'm officially internet old.
No, you're officially internet famous on lots of levels. No, it's great. It made that mean that many more people find your really fascinating tarot deck. So, again, what do you feel about giving us a little read, a little something for our listeners? At the time of taping, it happens to be the summer solstice, so we're talking about some sun energy. Dave and I are feeling that right now.
Yeah, I wish it was sunny over here. It's storming.
The sun is always shining, and you know what? It's a long day, especially up there, so you might yet see the sun before it's on this.
This is true.
Okay.
All right. Left or right hand?
Left, please.
Okay. Left or right hand?
Left.
Okay. I'm going to start counting, and I want you to tell me when to stop. 1, 2.
Stop.
3. Okay, 3. You have the Two of Portals.
Ooh.
The Two of Portals is twos are always, any of the even numbers obviously are more stable than the odd numbers, which are always a little more chaotic. And this goes across for my deck and also other decks as well. This is a very interesting card in my deck. I love all the portals. They're more about finding things in yourself that you didn't necessarily know were there, almost like a hidden door in yourself. And the two, I will read it for you.
Please.
It's more about relationships and compromise. So the two small portals appear above one another. Has our ace portal bisected? No, the two portals are spinning in opposite directions, suggesting two different energies. The nurturing constellation of Cancer is in the sky, along with Cancer's native ruler, the moon. The two portals are dropping and moving closer to the water, which represents emotions and emotional capacity. The Two of Portals reversed, which it's not, but would suggest that there's more challenges in the way. This card can represent two individuals who are working together towards a positive outcome, but if it's reversed, it might mean maybe they're in opposition right now and it's a little tension there. This is kind of the card of run to the light, Carol Ann. Run as fast as you can. The meditation for this card is, what are the two energies you're dealing with right now? Or are there two people or two ideas right now battling for supremacy in your head?
Fascinating. And so that was, okay, first of all, tell me what the image is on the card.
Okay, so that was two different, we have an ocean down here.
Okay.
And we have these two different portals. So they're almost like dimensional holes that go who knows where.
Righto.
And then above in the sky, the constellation is Cancer. and there's a full moon, which is Cancer's natural ruler.
And P.S.
So,
at
yes.
time of taping, the moon will be full, actually tomorrow, and we are just starting Cancer season.
And you called it.
Just saying.
Nailed it. You called the card, so.
That is amazing. That is amazing.
That's pretty cool.
All right.
I love when they
Thank
do
you.
things like
And
that.
so, okay, give us the summary of it one more time in our final moments. The summary of that card.
You've got two different energies are opposing each other.
Okay.
And since you got it upright, I would say it's that they're trying to work together. So there's two different things going on right now in your life that you're working on, or two different people that you're working with that are trying to get together and make it so, but it's going to be so.
Okay. Well, and this is for everyone. This isn't just for me. I called it for all of our listeners. Whenever you hear this, it is going to apply. And I love I took note of I love the word portal. That's always been kind of a fascinating, like that word's got this positive charge for me. It's just a mystery. And that correlates to the cups.
Correct.
Two of Cups, right? Fascinating. Absolutely. Oh my God, there's so much to explore here in this deck. And I hope that everybody has a chance to explore this, right? Tarot of the Unexplained. And you are at Davezilla.com, right? As you just...
At Davezilla. Yep. Davezilla is mostly my humor blog that's been around a long time.
Okay. And I saw some album artwork as well, correct? So you will learn. So how do people find the deck, Dave?
The deck would be, right now it's available for pre-order. It comes out August 5th on Wiser. It also means it'll be everywhere. You can already pre-order it on Amazon, Powell, Barnes & Noble, everybody.
Fabulous.
Yep. You can also get it from me through my main site for occult things that I write about, and that's hexsupport.club.
Oh, that's funny. hexsupport.club. Fantastic. This has been a true pleasure. Any final words you'd like to leave us with?
No, but that was so fun. Thank you. I really enjoyed myself. And
me too. Absolutely. I can't wait to get my hands on this deck in August. So come back again soon. I'm sure there's so many more things to talk about for us. And, I send you blessings for your summer. Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. I'm Bonnie Burkert, and I'm just here to talk to people that are really giving us, I say tools for transformation, but just helping us shine wherever we possibly can. It can be crazy out there, but let's just remember to believe in magic and the mystery. It really helps us get through. Tony Sweet is on Fridays at 3 p.m. and he likes to gather the community live, so please join him. And also watch for shows from Robert Hensley, The Minuteman Report. Thanks for sharing and following us and letting people know what we're doing here at the Club Paranormal. Truth be told, until the next time, shine on.